Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for attending today's webinar on 5 ways AP automation can help your company grow. The presentation today will be given by AvidXchange, and on the line with us today we have John Parisi from AvidXchange and Carol Harris. We also have Ashley Canale, a Client Strategy Manager at Interdyne Artists, and myself, Lisa Cummings. I also am a Client Strategy Manager with Interdyne. Do want to point out, registration is open for Summit, and this year it's going to be held on October 15th through the 18th in Orlando, Florida. So sunny Orlando. And there currently is a $400 savings if you register by June 27th. So you can also save an extra 10% with the code PRPARTIS. We will be recording the presentation today and sending that out afterwards. And also, if you have questions, you can put those into the little hopper on your right-hand side of your screen, and we'll answer those at the end of the session. So I am going to go ahead and hand it over to John and let him begin the presentation for us today. Take it away, John.
Thank you. Hey, thank you everyone for jumping on the call today, right before the holiday weekend. Just a quick introduction, John Parisi here. I'm an Alliance Manager here at AvidXchange. What that means is I work with Interdyne Artists as far as being their point person into AvidXchange. I've been working with inside the accounting space for, call it 10 or 12 years now, so very familiar with the space, accounting practices, best practices, work with CPAs, accountants, and partners. So with that, let's kick things off. So real quick, as far as the agenda, as far as what we'll cover in the next about 25 minutes or so, is just some common pain points associated with a manual AP process. Then we're going to look into the 5 ways automation can help your business grow. And then we're going to look into AP automation, how we look at it here at AvidXchange. And then we'll open up the phone for any Q&A that you may have or any questions that you may have that came up during the presentation itself today. So with that, let's jump right into it. Let's talk about some common pains associated with a manual process. The challenges facing a typical AP department are largely tactical in scope. They're linked directly to the everyday issues that AP staff in processing invoices, handling payments, and managing cash. According to a market research firm, IDC, they saw that companies lose between 20 to 30% in revenue every year due to inefficiencies. Those costs add up when a company processes invoices slowly. Process inefficiencies across accounting payables, across accounts payables. It can include from, companies have complicated routing workflows, overly complex workflows, involving ad hoc distribution decisions. It really does create headaches for everyone in the AP department. Then there's the slow invoice coding, correcting reference information, losing legacy software or hunting down too many cross-departmental touch points to double check the numbers can really lead to lagging invoices to be coded correctly. And then you have delayed verification. There's always lag time that creep up on invoices that get routed to the appropriate people within inside of your company or different organizations through the proper channels. But, a lot of times they end up sitting on the desk and they end up not getting approved and they end up sitting there for days. And, this all causes backlog of invoice closeouts, postings, and filings. They end up being siloed from the beginning, these invoices, and the entire end-to-end process, the invoice process, it does end up really hurting a lot of companies. Filing and retrieving, key data into ERP systems is not really the best way to leverage your accounting and finance talents. I always say, no one went to school to really earn their accounting degrees to open up mail and key in information into an ERP system. Manual processes, truly, they're inefficient. They consume a lot of time. Interdepartment file requests, having to do additional copies, all the obscure reporting can further complicate, the matters with a manual process. Then you have vendor management and the support to respond to, their questions. They typically are going to ask you 2 questions or call you 2 times during the process. First time is, did you receive my invoice? The second time is, where's my payment? How you handle these key priorities such as a vendor and risk management, fraud prevention, and trying to be proactive monitoring it along with spend management and sourcing initiatives around support. Often companies don't have the bandwidth to evaluate, recommend, buy, install, or test, and determine which solutions they want to bring on board. In these instances, many companies, they should think strategically about an in-house versus an outsourced AP operation. For many companies, outsourcing aspects of the AP function can be really a solid investment. And as already indicated, that practice is a driver of best-in-class for many AP departments. So let's look at, the lack of visibility in a manual system. Lack of visibility hinders the status of payables. Paper-based invoices are very difficult to track and manage, especially when multiple reviewers and approvers are involved. Then the lack of visibility can increase late payments. There's many reasons that payments can be late, and a number of them can be easily addressed to having greater visibility into the status of your payables. For example, an invoice may not have gotten to the right person, or it could have gotten lost in someone's inbox, or when you send out a paper check, you're at literally the mercy of the U.S. mail to deliver it, and there's really no confirmation if and when it arrives. You have the lack of visibility that obstructs cash flow. Today's AP departments, they're expected to take on more proactive role in supporting the fiscal health of your organization. Yet paper-based invoice processing truly makes forecasting liabilities difficult because the time and effort needed to capture the data accurately and convert it into an easily accessible format. And finally, there's the lack of visibility that increases the risk for fraud. You have the weak control combined with the lack of visibility of cash flow, and the processing of supplier invoices significantly increases this risk of fraud. So let's look at the 5 ways automation can help your company grow. For organizations looking to reduce delays associated with a paper-based invoice system, finding an ERP integration is really the key when you're looking for something to help with your AP automation. ERPs are used to, it's really used for storing physical backups of transactional data. So unless an automated solution allows the user to quickly pull invoices and payment data, it's much like replacing a filing cabinet with a computer. A user still has to take, many steps to solve an inquiry, manage it as a dispute, or, even look up a mismatched invoice. Another important consideration is ensuring that your IT won't be burdened with a new infrastructure requirement or a change. This is a big selling point for IT management and something that can enhance your business case for why you should be adopting a automated AP solution if you don't have to task IT with another project. It's really a long-term strategic business plan rather than just a quick fix for AP. A SaaS approach helps to preserve capital by automating accounts payable processing without adding an additional complexity or expenditure for IT. The second benefit helps manage time. You know, the one thing we'll never have enough of. There was a study by the Arnett Partners recently that AP automation, they did a report around automation benchmarking. The report states that 2 out of 3 companies reported wasting an average of about 8 hours per week handling invoices, and this all revolves on the problems around AP automation in their AP departments. Many accounts payable departments are, you know, they're still dependent on costly and sluggish accounts payable processes. Some of them are still heavily dependent on, you know, physically managing paper invoices and paper checks. Invoice processing still takes place in, you know, 4 general places before the final payment. These 4 phases are, you have your invoice receipt, invoice confirmation, invoice recording, and then finally invoice approval. And each of these 4 steps comes with their own time-consuming tasks. AP automation solutions, they come fully equipped with the tools, skills, technology, not only to manage the existing accounts payable functions, but also to integrate your capabilities to give you more of the time back in your day. You know, this includes time back to focus on, you know, maybe improving on your supplier relationships, securing vendor discounts. You may be missing those. And also for project and to manage your cash flow a lot better. So by adopting an AP solution gives you back that benefit of time that is precious to all of us. The third benefit revolves around improving processes in general. You know, it's no longer good enough for AP departments to be proficient at invoice and payment processing. You know, it's a good start. You know, the future of accounts payable depends on a greater organization's ability to leverage business intelligence for on-demand decision-making. AP automation allows you to simply simplify repetitive AP tasks such as, you know, opening mail, coding repeat invoices the same way each month, sending it to the same individual for approval every time, and mailing out checks for payments. A recent study by PayStream Advisors reported that about 45% of all of those that they surveyed found that the manual approval routing to be one of the top 3 accounts payable's biggest challenges. So AP automation creates a centralized location to receive and manage invoices while giving you the capability to utilize smart coding, set up digital approval workflows, and implement an integrated payment system. The fourth benefit is around visibility. How many of your late payments are actually due to your invoices approval process? When invoices stay with approvers for longer than expected, it stalls the payment process and results in delayed payments. Most likely, the lack of visibility into your invoice approval process contributes to this problem. Accountants often have to guess where an electronic bill is in the approval process and double check to see if it has been crossed and sent to the appropriate approvers. You know, it's scattered. This manual process is proven to be inefficient and expensive in the long run. Having visibility into your approval workflow is really critical for a number of reasons. First, you know, your finance department has approved accountability by knowing who had the invoice and for how long. The system should alert the finance department when an invoice has been sitting on someone's desk past the allowable time, so the appropriate action can be taken to keep that invoice moving through your system. Second, you'll have a clear picture of the invoice approval process from start to finish to reasonably eliminate any unnecessary steps. And third, and finally, you'll be able to uncover any gaps that could lead to fraud or compliance issues if the check by by the right approver. Think about where all of your invoices are stored. Do they live in the cloud, or are they in a shared folder? Are they tucked away in a filing cabinet? Regardless of how they're received, your invoices should live in one paperless platform for approvers to easily route and review. And the fifth and maybe the most important reason is the increase in security. AFP Payments Fraud Survey, they recently found that up to about 75% of companies have been hit by some type of payment fraud, and over about 2/3 of these have been the result of some type of check fraud. This has been increasing up to about 70% since 2015. So if you think about it, checks are still the most prominent way that suppliers are paid. So check fraud is something that is very serious, and a lot of companies do fall victim to having check fraud and bad checks being written against them. AP automation, increases payment security and control through, unlimited electronic approval levels. We offer the positive pay. We actually send the positive pay file to your bank with all checks that are sent out. So there's an additional security level that we supply as a vendor, and the ability to work with your existing banking relationship. So what we're not going to do is interrupt that relationship that you currently have with your bank. So let's take a look at how AvidXchange addresses automating AP. So before I go into that, just a quick overview for those of you on the phone who may not be familiar with who AvidXchange is. We're obviously a US-based company here in Charlotte. We've been around for close to 19 years now. We started in the real estate and doing proprietary solutions for real estate and construction industries, and we've ventured out from there to be really a horizontal solution, helping companies that really are having these issues around their AP. Very trusted, very well liked as far as with our customers. We have a very high retention rate. If you look as far as the type of clients that we work with, we really specialize in the mid-market space, companies that are between about $5 million to about $500 million in revenue. So we really play predominantly in the mid-market space. And the reason we do that is, one is probably the major reason. If you look at the automation adoption rate of mid-market companies, it's relatively small. So don't think if you're still doing the manual that you're behind the curve. Just know, I think it's the last stat I saw that the number of mid-market companies that have automated their accounts payable, it's less than 18%. So just know there's a lot of folks like you out there that are still receiving invoices through the mail, opening them up, and then paying them either by a paper check. Just know you're not alone there. At AvidXchange, we have like close to 1,200 employees, so very well known within inside the space, by far the leader. One thing I like to also talk about is, and really how we differentiate ourselves from the marketplace, is what we have is not only our invoice solution, where we're able to scan invoices in, but it's really how we process payments on the back end. We have a network of close to 180,000 suppliers in our network. And what that means for you is we already know, and we'll probably already have relationships with probably close to 25 to 30% of your vendors. And we know how those vendors, or your vendors, already how they would like to be paid, when they would like to be paid, and in what format. So let's take a look at the AP, I call the AP lifecycle. Anywhere where you see the AvidXchange logo, that's wherever you see the X, it's where software or service steps in to automate that manual task. Where you don't see the AvidXchange logo, so those blue circles, is any step that is unique or critical to your business, where you will still maintain 100% control. This doesn't mean we don't offer tools to help automate this, such as smart coding. However, you still have 100% control over exactly which GLs you want to be coding your invoices to. A couple of things I like to add. Like I said, we are a SaaS solution, so as long as you can access the internet, you can access AvidXchange. We're also mobile responsive. What that means is not only do our solution, you can retrieve it off a mobile device or an iPad, but regardless of the device you're on, the cell phone, the tablet, or desktop, the system is going to optimize the screen for you no matter what device. So you no longer need an app. If you're on the road or if you're mobile, you could access it from your device, and it's going to format to your screen. No longer will, on some application you go on a mobile device, if they're not mobile responsive, the application is shown on half the screen. You got to scroll up as you scroll down. Because we're mobile responsive, it's going to format correctly on your mobile devices, whatever that device is. So we talked about let's talk a little about how invoices get into our system. There's really three ways. The first way is any invoice could be emailed into us. What we're going to do is designate an email address for your suppliers in which they can send their invoices into us electronically. Your suppliers could also send those invoices to us through the U.S. mail. What we're going to do is designate a lockbox for you at that point, we're going to gather those invoices and scan them into our system. But also, there's also a manual system where we would allow you, if you would like, you could self-scan it yourself, take those invoices that you would receive, say the invoice comes into you ad hoc. You don't have to manually key it in. You could scan it in, and then that's a third way you could get those invoices into our system. So once AvidXchange receives the invoices, what we're going to do is we're going to extract all the header details around that invoice, including the PO number, and submit their invoices we're going to submit that invoice into our application. This will initiate the approval workflow on those invoices based on predefined rules, conditions, logic, really you name it. We can mimic as far as your workflow that you currently have. So let's jump into what it would look like in the actual solution itself. So after we receive that invoice, what we're going to do is scan it, and we're going to pull into all the header details. The invoice will be routed into what's called My Invoice page. Think of it as your dashboard. So again, all those invoices come into us either by fax, you scanning it, or by mail. This represents this dashboard. This represents all the invoices requiring some type of action specific to you as the user. This could be coding, or it could be you may be just simply reviewing those invoices. So as the users, they have access to all their pertinent data from the invoice number, vendor ID, the company name, all the way down to the amount. You can even configure your view to see only the data that's most important to you. So you can hide particular columns if that information that's being presented to you is not important. And this change that you make will only affect your view and not anyone else within inside the company. If one is simply reviewing these invoices and not, responsible for coding them, they can easily just check all the boxes for those invoices in the queue and quickly approve them. If they're the one that is responsible for coding invoices, they can easily select the invoice number for that invoice to review, and this brings up the invoice detail page. And here's the snapshot of what that invoice detail page looks like. What you see on the right-hand side is a digital scan of that invoice. If there's multiple pages, you'll see all the pages that we've scanned for that particular invoice. And then on the left-hand side is all that header information that we've pulled off. The first step that you'll usually take with an invoice is the need to code the invoice to a GL account by clicking on the distribution tab on the bottom. If your company has scenarios where you need to code invoices across multiple locations or GL codes, you can accomplish this by simply clicking add or add additional distribution lines. When allocating to additional code values, you can search by code value or code descriptions. The system will continue to filter results based on the criteria entered. For each distribution line, you can adjust the percentage split for various lines so that the invoice is fully distributed. You can update the amount column. You'll see the system will automatically calculate the percentage as well. In order to save or approve the invoice, the remaining amount must add up to the invoice total. The second tab is, there's a comment tab. This is a great place to track any communication that is happening around that particular record. Think about the communication that is occurring over the phone, or it could be communications via an email or even in person. Now you have access to all that information in one centralized location. Logging a comment is relatively simple as typing the information in the notes section and then selecting log comment. When submitting, you can also send this information via email, but it's not required. Probably right after the distribution line, probably the next most important thing you would end up doing is the workflow. The workflow tab contains all the information regarding the workflow of that invoice. So you can see where the invoice is currently at in the process. So on the screen you see where it's highlighted in blue. That's where that invoice is in your process. And it will also show you what that next step that invoice will take, whatever your process may be. One of the great things about our workflow engine is that you have the ability to set, timers and alerts at each step of the workflow, allowing that user a number of days to take whatever action is outlined. For example, let's say I've allocated my manager 3 days to review code and approve. On day 4, if that invoice is still sitting on my manager's desk, it will begin to automatically show up on some escalation report, which you have sent to other individuals in your company for them to review so they can take action on them. You also have the ability to build conditional steps. This allows you to insert, say, a step in the workflow only for invoices that meet a particular dollar threshold. So if an invoice, say, is greater than $5,000, the workflow will trigger that it needs to go to a VP for their approval. So what I really want to stress is the tool is very flexible. So whatever your workflow is, we're going to be able to mimic it. If you don't have very, detailed or thought out workflows, we can help you with that as well, with some best practices. And then there's the history tab. The history tab is really, think of it as an audit trail, capturing all the actions performed on each invoice. Anything modified to that invoice will be captured. This is really the best part, that all of this information is reportable. An important and keynote is that this invoice history cannot be edited or deleted. Therefore, it's a great resource for auditors. You can grant your auditor read-only rights of your installation so they can view all the pertinent information that they may have interest in on that in particular invoice that they're looking up. So real quick, I'd like to just go over, we talked about how invoices coming into the system. The very next step would be, how do we process the payments? So once the invoice comes in, we scan it, we approve it, it's been through the workflow, we enter it into the accounting system. Now we have to pay it, that invoice to your suppliers. We could process that payment on your behalf in 3 particular formats. We could either do it through a one-time use virtual card. We could do what we call an enhanced ACH transfer, or if your vendor still prefers to be paid by a paper check, we can help facilitate that as well. So with that, I know we're running right on a half hour. So with that, we will open it up. Hopefully, I just shed a little light as far as what AP automation could look like and some of the benefits that you could experience by adopting a solution such as AvidXchange. So again, like to thank you for attending. And I'm going to pass this back to you.
Thank you, John. That was great. We do have a couple of questions. The first one being, can I send all of my vendor payments through AvidXchange Pay?
Yes, you can. You can send AvidXchange, the purpose is to accommodate really all your vendor payments. The only payments that you select to be paid by AvidXchange will be the ones we facilitate. Example are payments that, that a corporation may ultimately want to retain and pay themselves would be, payments around employee reimbursements, expense reports, wire payments. But yes, we can facilitate payments to their suppliers, with the exceptions of payments that may be paying to their employees, like expense reports or dividends and things in that matter.
Okay, great. Another question we have in the queue is, can I still print checks?
You can. If you decide that you don't want AvidXchange to process the payment and make the payments on your behalf, which we can do, you can still print the checks yourself because we understand there's times that you may have that need. We offer a self-managed payment option that does enable you to print MICA checks on blank check stock.
Oh, nice. Okay. Another question we have here is, will my invoice approval process need to change?
It doesn't. No, it does not. Like I stated earlier, we'll mimic whatever your workflow process is today. But if you don't have one, or if you're looking for, best-in-class workflows or things that we have seen that have really worked well with other clients, we'll work with you to help improve that workflow. But no, it doesn't have to change. If it's working fine for you, we could just mimic it, no matter how easy it is or how complex that workflow may be.
Okay, great. And I guess that kind of goes in conjunction with the next question of if they could set up their own personalized workflows. So I think the answer is yes there.
Oh, you're good. We're going to bring you on to AvidXchange. Yes, you can. Yeah, so, they created if you think about it, they created their workflow initially. All we're doing is taking that workflow now and like digitizing it per se, put it into our system and into our system. So when that invoice comes in, it's going to flow the way they expect it and have that invoice flow to the appropriate person. But what's nice now is there's going to be some logic, some rules behind those workflows.
Yeah, very, very good to know. And the very last question that's in the queue is, how do I add new vendors?
Well, as far as adding new vendors, you will always have your accounting system to be the master record. So you would add the new records or new vendors into your accounting system, and then we will pull that information from your accounting system, so you don't have to update it in two places. But best practice, always have your accounting system to be the master record.
Yep.
So you don't have to update it inside of AvidXchange.
Yep, very good. That is all the questions that I have. So yes, thank you all for attending today. We really appreciate you taking the time out to see the presentation. And if you do have any follow-up questions or would like to see a more detailed demo, you can contact Chelsea Schlupp, Ashley Canale, or myself, Lisa Cummings, and we will get you set up and answer any questions that you may have.
Very good. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye now.